Ask the Mayor on KWBE with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. If you have a question, give us a call. We'll pass that question along. If I can pull up my program here to see if there was one. Not yet. We're working on one, though, Mayor. We'll give you a couple of them here before too long. But
sounds good.
Yeah. Hey, this was kind of a big week. It was the annual Clean City pickup. Monday through Wednesday program. Yesterday was the last day. Today's kind of a go back and get any missed areas, if there are any. But any preliminary results on that?
I do have some preliminary results. Jason Moore sent me some information first thing this morning, and I think we had 1,187 stops. Monday they stopped at 551 residences, Tuesday 299 residences, and Wednesday was 337 residences. Mm-hmm. I think because we've been doing the city cleanup for a number of years, it's really getting to be more and more refined. And one of the statistics that I just quickly calculated is, we still have people who put things out that don't qualify. But if you look at that, that's only 5.5% of the total stops of where things were put out that we just couldn't take. So, when you think about that, that's really, really pretty good.
Yeah. Monday always seems to be the big day. That's kind of that central northeast area where you have a big concentration of homes. It's not the biggest geographic area, but it seems to get the most people taking part.
It does. Tuesday seemed to be our lightest day, and I don't know if that's normal. But, the streets department does a great job with this program, and when you think about it, if you didn't have such a things like this, sometimes it's really hard to get to the landfill if you work full time. There's other people that get rid of things in probably the wrong ways in road ditches, just to call it what it is. And so I think, as we continue to move forward, I think that's just one of the outstanding things that the community or the city does for the community.
This year, the program also included mattress drop-off, but you had to bring them to the landfill southwest of town, kind of went in the gate, and then I think to the left there as you go in, I'm pretty sure.
The compost site.
That's right. How many? Quite a few of them brought in?
It was. They filled up what would be a total of 9 30-yard roll-offs.
Wow.
So that's a lot of mattresses. And that's worked out really, really well because they're bringing their own personal mattress in and putting it in there. At one point in time, we used to pick up mattresses, but, mattresses are kind of a personal item.
Yeah.
And so that's why we've moved it to provide a place to get rid of the mattresses, which is good. Mm-hmm. And then they just have to bring them to the compost site. And that's worked out pretty well because it's right there at the dump.
And that has also kind of solved that problem of since you have somebody there looking at license plates or taking identities or registrations, you're not getting a lot of out-of-town dump-off that you used to get when you had it at the, one time it was first in Ella, and then I think you tried down by Center Street at one time, too, so that was kind of tough. It's always an interesting 3 days. We know that sometimes we had people from other areas that bring stuff in because it was an easy way to get rid of it. Yeah. And we also, it's amazing, and probably if metal prices are good, there's a lot of things that people put out that don't quite make it to the landfill, but they do make it to a salvage yard. I wasn't all that observant this year to see how many pickups were pulling trailers around the city and picking up the items before city street crews got there. Did you see any of that? I imagine there was some going on, as there usually is.
There were. I mean, and it was unusual. It just wasn't like the refrigerators and those type of things. Sometimes it was old landscaping stones that maybe somebody else could use. Yeah. And when you think about that, that's kind of a modern recycling.
Well, I know Jason always provides a full report later on to the Board of Public Works, so we'll wait to see on that. And he comes up with the costs and the numbers and the number of trucks used and the hours and everything, so we'll probably be seeing that before too long. So,
and then we'll see where it fits on the scale of the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Seems like anytime we were over 1,100 stops, 10,000, that's pretty good, I think.
I think it is. Yeah, it really is.
I can't remember what last year's figure was, but it's got to be closer above it, I would think. But,
so I really appreciate those guys. I mean, they also have it down to a science. Yeah. And probably the biggest thing when it was all said and done, no incidents and no injuries.
Yeah.
And so, you walk away with no incidents, no injuries, and you pick up 1,187 homes. that's a great place to be.
Yeah. A lot of trips back and forth from the areas to the landfill too. You see the trucks going down Sumner Street or whatever, and then back, and it's quite an army at
Right.
work there.
I mean, it's just the normal dump truck, and so
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people watched them, but between the loader operator and the dump truck, it's pretty easy to see how they just have
Yeah.
move in concert and get it done.
Yeah, they do. Big item from Monday night's council meeting was settling on an agreement with between the city and the Beatrice Public School District on what to do at Lincoln Street and 33rd Street at the site of the new elementary school, which looks like a city, a veritable city out there. A lot of work going on right now. It's really picked up. This was kind of it took a while to get to this point, how you're going to handle this. You had a couple of council members express maybe some misgivings about it a little bit, but in any event, it pretty much had to be done. I mean, you have to make sure the streets are safe, improved enough to what's going to become a much higher traffic area.
Yes, I mean, we worked. I mean, quite honestly, I think we started working on this of August, and the school in August was like a lot of projects. They weren't even 100% sure if the actual site was right. And when we talk about that, they know they picked the right site, but how the building sits on a site, it takes quite a while for the architects to kind of really say, okay, this is the exact place we want the building. Mm-hmm. So that is one thing that kind of sets you back. Mm-hmm. And then you're trying to get the building going. And so, I know when we met in December with the schools, we were trying to develop this partnership. It was like, we know we need to do this, but we also know we got to get this done and this done. And so once they were settled on where the position was and the ground was broke and they were starting to build, we were able to sit down and have some more conversations to develop this partnership. Mm-hmm. Where that school sits is kind of a unique location because, a lot of times when a developer would come in, they would have some taxable income. So you go tax increment financing to help out the whole project. Mm-hmm. But with a school, they don't qualify because they don't pay property tax. Mm-hmm. And then across the street, you got BSDC, and they don't pay property tax. Yeah. And then on the other side, you have the cemetery, which doesn't pay property tax. So we really were in a unique situation where there wasn't any help that could be provided without at least developing this partnership. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, I will say that all the 8 councilmen, and particularly me, I believe we did the right thing. Because I could just see what it would be like driving to the new elementary on the first day with the streets that we have now, because they're in the shape where they need to be redone, mm-hmm. and trying to handle anywhere from 300 and 385 cars getting their children to school.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that the children's safety, as Councilman Doyle pointed out, is so important. I think eliminating frustration with the traffic is so important. And at the end of the day, we are going to have a new elementary there for our students, which will help the community. We really needed to make sure we had the infrastructure, in this case, the roads in place, mm-hmm. that also supported it. So, did we really want to spend the money? No. Did the school want to spend the money? No. But it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. The estimated 4.3 million thereabouts, you'll be reimbursed by the district over time, the city will, but paying that up front, where are the sources coming from? Is it just a rearranging of priorities? Do you combine budget funds from other departments? How do you pay for it, I guess?
We're in the process of looking at that. We have several options that we do have. One will be prioritizing maybe a few projects, and you move it up and down on the 1 to 6th Street plan. We also are looking at how some of the departments stand as far as reserves. One of the things that we'll definitely make sure of, though, is that our reserves are where they need to be before you look for that extra cash. Mm-hmm. There's highway bonds, which probably isn't going to be the best option for this one. Mm-hmm. So we've got a pretty good idea where maybe we can at least find the money. And some of it we have.
Yeah.
We have, I think, roughly $1.8 million ready for a project like this. So now it's just finding the rest.
Is there still a possibility of outside, we hear of infrastructure funding all the time, and of course the past ARPA funding that came as a result of the pandemic. I don't know if that's a possibility at all anymore, but are there other sources out there that might help defray at least maybe a third or a half of this in the long run?
Well, we have those. We've been very busy writing grants, and we do hope that's the case. So, I mean, that would be the best case scenario, is that between now and I would guess 9 months from now, after we go through the design phase, something would come through. Yeah. And we will also continue to look for funding. I think, what was it? I think on the agenda we had a grant to put together a safe roads plan. You have to put the plan together before you can apply for more grants, but that particular safe roads plan could lead to larger grant opportunities.
33rd and Lincoln, anytime you mention roundabout, that always brings up the emotions of people for some reason. One of the points made by the Citizen Monday night about the roundabout, it says trucks can't handle those. Well, actually, where that roundabout is, trucks aren't supposed to be using that route anyway. And they typically use Court to 19th and then to Dorsey. That seems to be the redirection if you're going from east to north. A roundabout at that intersection, I was out there the other day looking at it, and there's quite a bit of space.
There is.
On that intersection. Does that make it a little bit easier to arrange that where people can work their way around that, knowing you've got the cemetery, the school, BSDC traffic?
Well, that and we talked about a three-legged roundabout, because we also want to make sure that there's 3 homes that sit there, and we want those 3 homes to be able to get in and out of their property as well. And it's that statistic when you look at having 250 to 350 cars coming in. It's only a half hour, but still, it's an important half hour to get your kids to school and to get them home. A 4-way stop's going to back up traffic.
Yeah.
Stoplight, when you have 300 cars, it's just going to be a tough go.
Yeah.
So, as we've moved through this modern era, roundabouts do have their place, and this will move the traffic the most efficient and the quickest way to get through, particularly when we put in the right turn lanes in the center lane. It really was well thought out by the people that do street planning, and I think at the end of the day, you'll find out that it will move traffic through, and will probably still accomplish, depending on the design, and I'm sure they'll take this into consideration, also accomplish some truck traffic.
Before we take a break here, I know they want to try to have the school completed and ready for opening in the fall of 24. As far as the timing on the street work, would any of that be done yet this year, or that take a little bit more time, do you think?
I highly doubt we'll see anything this year. I think it's going to take between 8 and 12 months just for the design period. That's why we as a city started meeting in August of last year, because we were hoping that we could come up with some arrangement by mid-November, December, which would allow people to JEO to move into the design phase, and we could be working on it even like this summer. So we're a little bit behind the curve, and so we will catch up. And at the end of the day, you're going to have a beautiful elementary school there, and you'll have the roads to handle the traffic.
Oh, one other question. Will this work push back any of the other Lincoln corridor work, do you think?
We're still in an analysis stage. I think with Lincoln corridor, it's a major project too.
And this actually is part of the corridor. It's just farther east than.
But I think again we're looking at a very logical way of how to do that in bits and pieces, because we don't want to tear up Lincoln completely with the traffic. So, those will probably handle like a 2 or a 3 block, construction or section at a time as money allows.
Okay. Back with more with Mayor Bob Morgan on Ask the Mayor in just a moment. Back on Ask the Mayor today with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan. We were talking about the the city agreement with the Beatrice Public Schools on the street work, Lincoln and 33rd. Question from a caller, kind of two parts on this. Why is it a 60-40 split, the city picking up the bigger share? And they were wondering why the project would stop on 33rd, kind of at the Cemetery Road, but not go all the way south to US 136.
Doug, good questions. I'm glad that came in. What we looked at is we looked at the roads, and those roads at one time were county roads that we asphalted over I don't know how many years ago, and when we annexed it into the city. And so we know that there were items on that street that had to be redone at our cost. And so the school had a study done, and in that study, and I don't know why they just didn't say required and not required, but they used the term warranted and recommended. And so what we felt from the city's perspective is anything that was warranted or required in that study because of the new school, those costs should be associated with the school and not the city. And when you look at that, right turn lanes were required, center turn lanes were optional. The roundabout was one that was recommended but not warranted, so there was some question about the payment there. And so what we did is we looked at what was all warranted or required because of the school and what the city should be doing just in their 1 and 6 year street plan based on the condition of the road. And if you drive the road, it really, it's in not the best of shape.
Yeah, it's not very wide either.
And it's not very wide. And so we have to be honest and say, okay, what's the city's responsibility on a normal road and project, and what should be the schools? And that's how the 60-40 split came.
Yeah. And on the part from the Cemetery Road south, why not that?
We're taking care of the immediate need right now, and $4.2 million is a lot to bite off. I think the other thing that we all probably have to think about is I'm not sure what the plans of the school will be, but I would guess that they are certainly looking at how to develop the rest of that land that they own, whether it would be ball fields or whether it would be, I don't know, elementary, middle school, I don't know what it would be. But if we know that down the road, 10 years, there's going to be a new project developed there, what we don't want to do is pour concrete that lasts 60 years and then pull it out in 10 years because it wasn't in the right place or there's a different design. And so that seemed to be the best stopping point.
I see. Okay. A couple things to move on to. Oh, I forgot to ask you again. I keep thinking I'm going to ask this. I should write it down. The 4 current elementary buildings, as part of this agreement, you've agreed to take those over, demolish them, handle whatever, hazardous things, materials might be there. What do you think the prospects are of those sites being turned into, residential development or maybe commercial in some cases, or is that just too early to tell? Maybe a longer process there?
Well, I think it's too early to tell, but when you think about it, one of the things that you hear our economic development group talk about, and you look at what other people have said about the community, there's a housing shortage, and so these would provide places for really a nice development. Now, are you going to get them crammed full of houses? No, but you're going to have areas for nice development. Some of the other locations may be commercial properties or commercial ventures, depending on where the school land sits. And the other could be green space that would certainly make our community look better than an old building sitting there.
Yeah. So do you anticipate much costs with like asbestos removal, things like that? Because those are buildings built back in the 1950s, I think.
Well, the nice thing about that is there's always grants. The Nebraska Department of Environmental Issues, they helped us a lot with Dempster's getting some of the stuff out of there. We anticipate that same help. Is there some asbestos in the buildings? Probably. I don't think there's any question that there is, but I think we'll have some assistance and some help there.
Okay. Back to wrap up Ask the Mayor with Bob Morgan in just a moment. To wrap up Ask the Mayor today with Beatrice Mayor Bob Morgan, one of the things brought up toward the tail end of Monday night's council meeting was the potential for a policy change as to how items are put on city council agendas. You have a rule right now where you have to basically get, if a council member wants something on an agenda, you have to get basically at least 4 members to agree to put it on the agenda as it stands right now, if I remember right on that. And we won't get into the history of how that all came about. I think we kind of all know. But now there is a move to sort of just make it so a council member can just, if they suggest it, if they want it on the agenda, it would go on the agenda. Where are you headed with this, do you think?
Well, first of all, it's not going to be quite that easy, because one of the things as mayor and Mike McLean as the council president, we're not going to just put anything on the agenda.
Yeah.
But I think if we look back at what that said, and quite honestly, right now, Waterfall is a perfect example. Yeah. We had one council member, Ted Fairbanks, that wanted to put the Waterfall on the agenda, and quite honestly, I agreed. There's nothing wrong with having that on there, and at the end of the day, we're going to hit a nice waterfall that gets done. So, don't necessarily have to have 4 council members today to put it on there. And I think over the history, there's not a lot of things that have been denied by mayors. Now, again, you have different mayors at different times. Yeah. And so I think anything that is worthy of consideration should be on the agenda. Mm-hmm. And so, I just want to make that clear. Mm-hmm. I think in this case, it bogged things down because the same person wanted the same agenda item on over and over and over.
Which kept failing.
And so nothing else was getting done. And this was probably back in maybe the 70s?
80s or 90s, yeah. Because I was here for that, and it's called by the name of the council member. That's what the rule is, but we won't go into that.
We won't go there, no.
But it was done for a reason. Things were just getting bogged down on that one issue.
And so, I think that I've got very logical councilmen, and if they come to me with an idea that's worthy to put on there, we will. I certainly have done that. Mm-hmm. Might be a couple things we voted on that I may or may not have agreed on, but at the end of the day, it wasn't really bad for the community. Yeah. Now, one of the things that I always have to, caveat is that, I was elected to do the best I can in this position for the city, and so I have to remember that when ideas come out them, and vet, are they the best in the best interest for the city or not? So there'll still be somewhat of a vetting process.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing too is, couldn't an issue, even if it doesn't come before the council right away, couldn't it, even though it is the council, couldn't you bring it up in a work session for that matter and discuss it informally?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what work sessions are for.
Yeah. Okay. Understand you and the city council are going to take a tour of the Dempster property on Monday.
Yes, we are.
Everybody going to bring their protective gear or whatever?
Protective gear, and when your city administrator says, bring a flashlight, you're going, oh, okay. But yes, I think we need to go full understanding about the building. Yeah. And again, there's no short-term solution to Dempster's because we're still dealing with some ownership issues on all those. I think it sits on 6 or 7 parcels, and so there's some still ownership issues. But a lot of us haven't been through it, and we kind of talk about it. But now it's time to experience it.
Several months ago, I did with Chet McGurry, who at the time was the code enforcement officer. Now he's the community development officer. Right. He allowed me to go in there with him, and we took kind of a tour of the downstairs and everything. And I'll tell you what, it is dark in that building. There are some areas where it'd make a perfect setting for one of these ghost special things on television because you cannot see anything. But not only that, but the outside, and get kind of a feel for how it's been so dilapidated and run down and just needs to be taken care of at some point.
It does. And really, it's in some respects, I think it's really sad because at one point in time, it was a really pillar for the community. And, unfortunately, it had some bad things happen in the course of selling from one person to the next person to the next person. And now we find ourselves in a place where it just is a detraction and needs to be gone.
Yeah. You got to honor some youthful mayors Monday night. Mayor for a Day environmental project with Keep Beatrice Beautiful in the city. And took your share of jokes about how maybe some of those people should be the mayor. But that was a nice thing. That was a neat thing.
You know, people always ask me what's the most fun about being mayor, and that, to be honest with you, that's what's the most fun. I mean, if you think about the council meeting, and we made some decisions that had to be made, but at the beginning, it really was it was fun. Those kids were excited. I think that it's a worthy project. Keep Beatrice Beautiful does a great job, and it was just fun. It was just neat to see 8 young second graders with their enthusiasm, and you know, it's just neat that they can be at least rewarded for the efforts that they do, and also get a little bit of exposure to city government.
Kind of set an example for us adults on recycling and cleanup and things like that. Because I think those things aren't always top of mind, and we maybe don't pay attention to that as much as we should.
I think you're right, and as much as I hate to say it, Doug, it's partially age, because I do look up and down the street for the people that have recycling service and the people that don't.
Yeah.
I think there's some people in my age group that does a really good job at recycling, but I think there's a bunch of us that don't think about it.
Yeah. It's neat. It's neat. Your first Mayor for a Day program.
First
You'll
Mayor
have
for the
some
Day.
Other ones coming up in your four-year term.
Absolutely. It'll be fun.
Bob, thanks for being with us again.
Thank you.